Hey, Tamie M of TamieMCoaching.com, empowerment life coach and creator of the Freedom Class. And what I want to talk to you about today is how to use the gray rock method with a narcissist. Now, before I begin this video, I just want to quickly announce that we have a few spots available in the calendar this week for the free one-to-one consult with myself or a member of my team for the Freedom Class program. So if that's of interest to you, make sure to stick around till the end of the video for the announcement on how to enroll and sign up for the consult. And with that, let's get started. So let's talk about how to use the gray rock method with a narcissist. Now, before we dive into the gray rock method, we need to understand something about relating with someone who lands on the spectrum of destructive narcissism. Anyone who lands on the spectrum of destructive narcissism is lacking in empathy, lacking in conscience, and fully operating in nonstop maladaptive ways, right? Their method of showing up in the world, their way of being in any kind of relationship is really unhealthy, toxic, often even dangerous and destructive, and very maladaptive, right? So the point that I really want to get to is when we are enmeshed with a narcissist, and make no mistake, it's enmeshment because there really is no healthy relating with these individuals, right? So when we are enmeshed with a narcissist in any area of our lives, they're not approaching the relationship with the same genuine, sincere, heart space and spirit that we do, right? They are looking at us as a commodity. We are a source of what is known to be narcissistic supply for these individuals. So just like a vampire sucks the blood from their victim, people who land on the spectrum of destructive narcissism suck the vital life force energy from their victim, from their target, from whoever it is that they happen to be enmeshed with and targeting at this particular moment, right? So it's all about what they can drain from you, and that can be emotional, energetic energy in the way of being provocative in their attitudes, their behavior, etc. So they poke, they prod, they poke some more in the hopes of getting you to dance like a puppet on strings. And those of us who are a match to, in particular, high spectrum destructive narcissists, we tend to be in the room with these people to begin with, because we're carrying not just a high empathy nature, but a certain amount of unresolved wounding, unresolved trauma, which is in my opinion and experience, the magnetic force that draws us into these very unhealthy, sometimes dangerous, certainly destructive dynamics with these people. So for that reason, we tend to be very reactive, and we don't have to be in a relationship with a destructive narcissist for very long before they're adding unto the pain and the trauma that we already carry, right? So it's just stacking. And when you are on the receiving end of all the nonsense and the BS that a destructive narcissist will bring to the table, their manipulative ways, their smear campaigns, the ways in which they gaslight you, in other words, cause you to doubt your reality, lie to you with an agenda, lie about you with an agenda, lie by omission, make you feel like you're the crazy one. You're having very legitimate reactions and responses to very inappropriate and unhealthy ways of thinking and behaving. The way that they show up in the relationship, you're having what is actually, when you think about it, often a very rational response to very irrational behavior, but they're such master manipulators that they're excellent at turning the tables and manipulating dynamics in such a way that we feel like we're the crazy ones, right? Like we're wondering like, what the hell is wrong with us? We have been so messed with, those of us who have been on the receiving end of narcissistic abuse. Again, through the smear campaigns, the being lied to, the being lied about, the gaslighting, and on and on and on it goes, right? All the many layers and levels of emotional, psychological, spiritual abuse, and sometimes sadly even physical and sexual abuse that take place in these dynamics. So the whole point of this little rant being, we are a source of supply to these people. And the more highly reactive we are, the more we feed them that energetic, that emotional supply. So emotion, energy in motion, right? So if they can come along and glance at you a certain way, or, you know, make a comment under, you know, the ludicrous guise of being a joke, or, you know, attack you in any way, shape, or form, overtly or covertly, right? Like aggressively or passive aggressively, right out there in front of everybody, targeting you, or behind your back, under the radar, sneaky, manipulative, however it's being done, our reactions feed them. They don't call them energy vampires for nothing. So we become a source of energetic and emotional supply to these sick individuals. And the more we react, the more they get fed, right? So they are very high conflict personality types, because they really feed off of the conflict and the drama and the pain and the shame that they can cause in another individual. They get a kick out of it. It's very sick, but it's the truth. They get a sick kick out of that sort of power dynamic, right? So narcissistic supply is what they're after in these interactions. So it's important to know, if you don't by now, that every time you react with high emotional intensity, high voltage reactions, high emotional intensity, you're literally handing over your vital life force energy to this toxic energy vampire, no matter who the individual is. This could be taking place with your spouse, with your partner, with your adult child. This could be taking place with your neighbor, with your colleague at work, with your boss, with your family of origin. You know, one individual being the ringleader, and then there's the mob, everyone, you know, sort of circling the wagon because they love to gather the troops, right? And there's always the favorite target, the scapegoat in a sick, dysfunctional family dynamic. So we fully have been conditioned to be a source of supply to these people. And the power of the gray rock method is we cease being a source of energetic supply. We cease being a source of emotional validation, right? Like when they poke or prod or provoke and we react and dance like a puppet on strings, they're validated in their false sense of superiority. Look how powerful I am. They, you know, really, I think about how sad it must be to have to go through life in such a destructive way, doing untold harm to others, just so you know you're alive, just so you know you matter. And that's the truth of it. That's what it boils down to. This is how they confirm their false sense of superiority and their, you know, perpetuate their sick power dynamics over others, and precisely why they like to target folks who are more vulnerable, folks who are more sensitive, folks who are more highly empathic, folks who maybe have a history of, you know, pain, trauma, drama, etc., that they have yet to fully resolve. They have yet to learn healthy boundaries, extreme self-care, where you end and I begin. Folks like, you know, untreated codependents, untreated children, you know, adult children of family dysfunction, whatever, you know, flavor of dysfunction it may be, combined with a high empathy nature, make for a fabulous target for this type of sick individual, right? So it's really all about they're propping themselves up and getting their hit. They're like energy junkies, right? But your energy, because they don't have enough of their own. Now, gray rock is ideal when you're unable to go no contact. The truth is, when we're talking about dealing with people who land on the spectrum of destructive narcissism, no contact is always going to be your best bet. But what's also true is that's not always possible. And it's certainly not always possible immediately, like as soon as you realize that's who and what you're dealing with, right? There's steps to take, things that need to happen before you can fully extricate yourself from the dynamic. So what do you do in the meantime? Well, gray rock is a very, very powerful method for you to use to take care of yourself. And it really boils down to just cutting off the source of narcissistic supply, making the decision that you are no longer going to be the source of supply to this energy vampire. I'm not saying it's going to be easy first time out of the gate that you try to do this. It might require some practice, but it begins with a decision. I am no longer going to be a source of supply to this toxic energy vampire. It's time now to start taking care of me. So the goal is to really become just like a gray rock, hence gray rock method, right? You want to look, act, and feel just like a gray rock does. Completely uninteresting, completely boring, flat line. Cutting off the source of supply to the narcissist. So this means no emotional reactions, no defending yourself, no explaining yourself, no dancing like a puppet on strings, no, giving in and getting in the mud with them, trying to win the right fight. You'll never win with these people. No matter how right you are, no matter how many mountains of evidence you might have, you'll never win with these people, right? They are willing to do and say things that you would never consider doing or saying to win, right? So give up the illusion of having the last word, finally being heard, winning the right fight. It's not going to happen with someone who lands on the spectrum of destructive narcissism. So surrender to that reality and decide instead that you're going to now start taking care of yourself. And that begins with cutting off the source of supply to this individual by becoming as boring and uninteresting as you possibly can, giving them nothing, zero, nada, in so much as you are able. If you can't give them nothing, zero, nada, if that's not an option, then they get as little as possible. One-word responses, things like, okay, and silence. Oh, and silence. Or absolutely nothing. They come along and provoke and prod rather. Provoke and prod and provoke and prod some more is what they do, right? Our egos get involved and we're conditioned to react. And I can tell you that, myself, I'm all about standing my ground and taking care of me. So it's very easy to get very scrappy in that type of an exchange with a destructive narcissist. I know how easy it is and how practicing this new behavior can take a little bit of practice. It's not, our knee-jerk reaction necessarily, right? But I promise you that it is a much more powerful and effective way to take care of yourself and ultimately lose the narcissist entirely, which should be, if you're dealing with someone who lands on the spectrum of destructive narcissism, that should be the goal, right? That should ultimately be the goal. Now, I know some of you have adult children who land on the spectrum and things are complex and complicated, and I get that. There's exceptions, but more often than not, that really should be the goal, right? So to achieve that goal, we've got to become completely boring, completely uninteresting to these folks, and cutting off their source of energetic supply. We leave all emotion out of any exchange that we have with them. All emotion. Really getting to the place where whatever they say doesn't land. Or if it does, because we still have some work to do on our old owies and wounds and whatever, and they know where to go, right, to really get that reaction from us, we're going to pretend like it didn't land, right? Like just, picture it landing over there on the floor somewhere, right? It's not because they come along and say something that we necessarily have to take it on, right? So I like to envision, when the bullshit's coming at me, it goes right over my shoulder and lands on the floor. It doesn't stick to me anymore, right? Now, easier to say when you've got some serious healing and recovery under your belt and you're not so tender and sore in some spots, but you can make the decision to hold on to yourself, breathe, and give them nothing if possible, or as little as possible. And in so doing, again, you cut off the source of supply. You are no longer a fun, yummy, delicious target. And ultimately, they have to go somewhere else to get their hit, their fix, their source of energetic supply, and leave you alone because you're no fun. If you're not going to dance like a puppet on strings and react with high voltage, intensity to all their bullshit and nonsense, it's not going to be any fun for them. Right? So they'll have to go somewhere else and leave you alone and leave you in peace so you can start living the life that you actually came here to live, which I assure you does not include being the target of an empathy deficient, conscienceless, toxic, dangerous, destructive individual. None of us came to the planet for that purpose. But many of us live for far too many years as if that is our purpose. That is not your purpose, right? So this is all about just doing what it takes to unplug, to disengage, to cut them off energetically so that you can start living more healthily and more peacefully. You certainly deserve that. Now, comment below and let me know whether or not you've actually ever tried this method, and if so, how'd it go for you? So what should you expect when you choose to use the gray rock method with a destructive narcissist in your life? Well, at first, they're probably going to be confused. And then they're probably going to be pissed. They don't like losing control and power over you, right? So initially, they might be taken back a little bit. And then they're not going to like it. And it's going to show. And it's going to show because they'll crank up the volume on whatever method it is that they use to get the emotional reaction and emotional response out of you. Whatever it is that they typically do, you can expect it to get worse before it gets better, right? They will just simply crank up the volume, trying to elicit a negative response from you. Any attention at all is what these folks are after. And negative is just as good as positive, especially if you're the one in the process of erupting. Look how powerful I am. Look how superior I am. See, I told you she was crazy, right? Like, it's a really sick game that they play. So when they're not able to affect that kind of control and power over you, they're going to up the ante for a little while. And your job is to stand firm in your decision to take care of yourself. Keep breathing, hold on to yourself, envision yourself in your own little crystalline bubble surrounding you, filled with light and love. Nothing gets out of this bubble but unconditional love. Nothing comes into this bubble except what is for your greatest good. Hold on to yourself and stay committed to being as flat, boring, uninteresting as possible. You don't give any updates, no news, good, bad, or otherwise. You are neutral. No information, no ammunition, no responses. Fully committed to just being the gray rock in the room. Eventually, they're going to realize this isn't any fun anymore. And like I said before, they'll have to go somewhere else to get their hit, their fix, their supply, right? You can also expect that once that next source of supply becomes boring or runs out for any reason, perhaps the individual is onto them rather quickly and manages to escape sooner rather than later, whatever it is, when that next source of supply, the next target becomes boring and uninteresting or unavailable for whatever reason, chances are good they're going to circle back and try you again. If they have been able to elicit high voltage, intense, emotional responses from you historically, they're not necessarily going to give up so easily. So it'll get worse. You hold your ground. They'll be forced. It's that or starve, right? Energetically. So they'll be forced to go somewhere else to get a hit, a fix, their source of supply. When that runs out, these folks are lazy. They don't necessarily just go off and find another source of supply. They more often than not, it's called hoovering. Many of you have heard the term. We'll save that for another video, but suffice to say, they will circle back to an old source of supply, someone they were historically or previously able to get their energetic hit and fix from, and try again. Your job is to maintain that stance, however many times it takes. Eventually, especially if you're doing your own healing and recovery work for real, eventually, I promise you, because I've had the experience so many times in my life, they disappear into the ether. They disappear into the ether because ultimately, if you're doing the internal work on you, there's no longer a match there. There's no longer an energetic, vibrational, magnetic match there. So use the gray rock method to take care of yourself, to unplug, disengage from this enmeshed, toxic, painful, destructive dynamic, even if it's just emotionally and energetically. Be prepared to ride the wave of it getting worse. Sigh a sigh of relief and continue to exercise extreme self-care once they do disappear. But don't kid yourself, they may very well circle back. I've had them circle back after 10 years. It's fascinating how these people can't, what's got to be going on in your head that 10 years later you're thinking it's a good idea to try and hoover this individual back into your life. But it's the kind of thing that they do, right? It worked once before, so maybe it'll work again, right? So just know that that's likely to be the case, but you can really stand firm in your own self-agency, in your own personal power. Do what you need to do to take care of you. Put your ego aside, drop any illusions of winning or being heard or getting your needs met in this dynamic. Never going to happen. Never, 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 never going to happen. So just become, a dry well. And then if they circle back, which is more likely to be a when than an if, at least, once or twice, when that happens, just, recommit to being as flat, uninteresting, boring, a dry well for the individual. And again, if you're doing your own work, which has nothing to do with them, your stuff, healing, recovering, growing, evolving, becoming your best self, living your best life, they do ultimately disappear into the ether, and that is a beautiful thing. So just know, this is not about stonewalling. It's not about playing games. It's not about being rude. It's not about being passive aggressive. It's not about treating someone to the silent treatment. This is a very powerful method of exercising extreme self-care. This is a means of taking care of yourself, protecting yourself, and your vital life force energy. This is about not giving your power away by becoming a far less appealing target. This is about emotional and energetic distance and very healthy boundaries. This is about you stepping into your power and really, as I said, taking care of yourself in the most effective and powerful way by refusing to give your power away. You can do this. And with that, I'm going to call it a wrap. My friends, I hope you got some value out of this today. If you liked what you heard, remember to like, comment, subscribe to the channel. If you're new to the channel, subscribe and hit that bell to be notified when I post new videos throughout the week. Share it with your friends if you think it would be helpful. And as I mentioned at the top of the video, we have a few spots available in the calendar this week for the free one-to-one consult with either myself or a member of my team for the Freedom Class program. So if that's of interest to you, be sure to click the link in the description below where you can apply to see if you qualify for the free one-to-one consultation with us. And as always, I will leave you with this. Know your value, and unlock your freedom. Much love. Bye for now.